What up, though, Proud Nation? Welcome back to another quickly and prompt DSA live podcast where we are talking to a very, very, very special guest that we are excited to have on. If you are a Detroit Lions fan, you should know who he is. And if you don't, shame on you. If you are on Twitter and you don't know who he is, shame on you. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. I am talking about our guest today, one Mr. MathBomb, AKA Kent Lee. And I'm probably going to botch his last name because I'm terrible with it. Palati, did I say that right?
Close, man. Platte, yep.
Platte, all right. And he's also a writer on Pride of Detroit. Welcome to the show. What is going on with you, man?
Not a lot, man. Ready for this draft to go.
I know, right? I know. We almost there. We almost there. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to let you know who's on the panel. We got more than usual, so you're going to see people rolling in and rolling out. First up, we have one half of the dynamic duo, real Detroit Lions fans. Andrew, what up, Andrew?
Hey, what up, Luke?
Hey, man, we here. We ready to do this. Then we have the other half of that dynamic duo. Don't know which one is Batman, who's Robin, but that is one Mr. Real. Real, what up, though?
I'm Batman. No, but yeah, I'm happy to be on today. What's going on, everybody in the chat? And thank you for letting me be on because I'm a big Pride of Detroit fan and a MathBomb fan.
Hey, I'm telling you, he just don't know. It brings me joy. And then we have the heart of the city, Mr. 313 J-Mo. What up, though?
What's good, everybody? Trust me, it's going to be a fun one today.
All right. And then we have on Mr. Jim Bordeau from Lions on the Prowl. What is going on, Jim?
Hey, nothing much. It's going to be an awesome show tonight. I've been looking forward to this all day.
I know, right? Now, what y'all don't know, ladies and gentlemen, is backstage, and yes, I do literally mean backstage, we will be rotating in two more members, which I will give them their shine right now. Starting off with fellow DSA member, Mr. Nomis J. What up, though, Nomis?
Hey, what up, though, Luke? Everybody on the panel, let's have a good one tonight.
Yes, yes. And then we have another guest, someone who knows his X's and his O's, and is also a fan himself, Mr. One, the Hook Cam. What's going on?
What's going on, everybody? Thanks for having me on.
Hey,
excited to get into this one, man. Let's get after it.
Man, let's do this. Let's do this, and let's do this. Y'all, we got a lot to cover, okay? And I mean a lot. I was going to do a roll call, but I think I'm going to get right into it because I don't think people know, Mav, exactly what it is that you created. You created this cool system, right? This cool system, 3 letters, RAS. All right. Now, if y'all have no clue what that is, we're going to get you some clarity on it. All right. We're going to get you some serious clarity on it. All right. Starting off with the fact of this, tell the people what does that RAS stand for?
The RAS stands for Relative Athletic Scores. It puts a player athletic testing on a 0 to 10 scale. Everybody can understand that. 0, bad, 10, good, and everything in between. It provides that context for how good a player measures compared to every player at that position group from 1987 all the way to his draft year.
All right, okay. All right, so listen, we're going to get into it, people, because that system, look, they already coming in. Look, you got, thumbs up for the RAS score for Simmons. So they already rolling in. If you have not hit that like button, please do so, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. Now, let's get right into this. For the fans who do not know, how does analytics, like what don't the fans know about analytics that is a very telling as it pertains to football?
People always have this misconception about analytics that it's just a bunch of nerds down in their basements who don't know nothing about football, which is totally untrue because it's a bunch of nerds in their basements who watch a lot of football and pay a lot of close attention to football. Analytics is a combination of film and numbers. We always talk about it as if it's just the numbers. It's separate. It's two different things, the film crew and the analytics crew. But if you're using one and not the other, you're doing it wrong. It's just brass tacks there. You're either doing it right and using both or you're not. And I think people get that wrong a lot. Analytics allows you to isolate certain things from the film, so you don't fall too in love with a guy on tape. You can look at, well, what does that mean overall? He looks great on a couple of plays. Well, it's only a couple of plays. Maybe he's only a part-time player. He's only good in certain roles. Maybe he's not very productive in those plays. We talked off air about Byron Jones. Well, Byron Jones doesn't have a lot of interceptions. That doesn't mean he's bad, but from an analytics perspective, you still want those numbers. You still want to see those things. Athletic testing allows you to look at what a player's athletic traits are and isolate it in the safest position you can get in a controlled environment. How fast can that dude run? How explosive is he out of his breaks? How quick is he when he's changing direction? You can isolate those things with athletic testing, and then you can go look at it on tape. And if you have a guy that looks explosive on tape, but he isn't when he measures, you have to ask yourself why. And the hardest part is figuring out that why, because sometimes you'll have a guy who doesn't look explosive on tape, but then he measures by jumping like a 40-something inch vert or something like that. And then you have to ask yourself that question again. Why is that? And that's where that combination of film and analytics comes in, is trying to figure out the why whenever there's a discrepancy.
All right, listen, for those people who do not know, we have on MathBomb his website is for his actual RAS system is up in the description, as well as Pride of Detroit is in the description, and his Twitter account is all in the description. So make sure you go and follow him on Twitter and check out the websites, because you do not want to miss a lot of the information that you can get, whether you agree to agree or agree to disagree. This is good for the sport, people. All right. For the first set of questions, we're going to roll with you from the panel. We're going to start this off with Real. Real, you got Mr. MathBomb on. He's ready to drop some bum knowledge for you. What you got for the people?
Awesome. So MathBomb, I just got to start off by saying, man, I am a financial analyst, a corporate financial analyst. So I'm constantly working with statistics, analyzing them. So the first question I have for you today is, how did you develop the RAS system? Was it just, putting together players' statistical measures from the combine and kind of mixing and matching the formula? Is it proprietary formula? Is that something that you don't really share? And then also, has it evolved over the years?
Oh yeah, it's not so much a proprietary formula. Without a sizable database, the formula doesn't really mean anything. And you'll see that when you go and look at some of the players from back. I said this starts in 1987. You go back and start looking at the variance at those players way back then. It's a lot more. There's a lot more variance in the numbers than when you start getting guys now, and that's because it's up to the draft year. So those guys in the 80s, there's 30, 40, 50, 100 guys in that database for any particular position. Whereas now, 2020, I got over 2,000 receivers in this database, something like that for linebackers and corners as well. There's not a lot of variance to these scores. Once I start adding guys in, you'll see a guy drop maybe a 0.01 or go up a 0.02 or something like that over the entire course of a draft season. And without that database, it doesn't really help. So when I first started developing that was the biggest hurdle that I ran into, is not having the sizable data that I needed to be able to do anything meaningful with it. I tweaked the formula quite a bit. It's remained almost 100% static since 2017. I haven't changed it at all since then, just cleaned it up so that it's a little bit more efficient when I run it. But the idea was to create something simple that fans could understand, because we had Spark. There's other proprietary formulas that are out there that you can go look at for athletic testing. But as a layman, as a general fan, that don't mean anything. You tell somebody, oh, that dude had 121 Spark. I mean, that's really, really good. But you ask the average fan and you tell them that, they ain't going to know what that means. Is that good? That sounds good. I mean, 120 is a big number, right? But if you tell somebody, yeah, he ran a 4.5, he had an 8.5 RAS out of 10, 8.5 out of 10, you understand that. That's 85. That's a solid B. That's good. I could take that, So the idea was to create something that allowed people to understand that a little better. It actually started in earnest with Le'Veon Bell and a couple of other players during that 2013 draft class that they were saying, oh, he's just not athletic enough. He's not super athletic. And it's like, where the hell were you seeing that with Le'Veon Bell? And it all came down to he ran a 4.6 40, and that was actually it. That was the whole unathletic argument, was he ran a 4.6 40. Never mind, the rest of his numbers were good. In fact, his 3-cone was fantastic for a small running back, and he ain't a small running back. So I really wanted to find a way that we could express what those numbers actually mean and where that meaning translates to the football field. And Raz, over the course of the last 8-9 years, has helped me do that.
Yeah, for
Awesome.
sure. For sure. All right, we'll roll this over here to you, Mr. 313 J Mo. What you got for him?
Now, I'm not gonna lie and say I've seen every Raz score you've ever put out, but Isaiah Simmons has the most perfect Raz score I've ever seen. It was nothing but green. It looked like I was looking at a bag of money or something.
That's what he is, man.
Like, his Raz score was 10 at this position, 10 at this position. I'm sure if he put quarterback, it would have been 10 at quarterback. Like, so considering his Raz score and what you've seen on tape, what do you think of him as a prospect, and do you think the Lions should take him at 3?
So just to point out, he actually does have a 10 Raz at quarterback. I just ran it for you. So just to put that to bed, he would have had a 10. He actually finished with a 9.98 out of 10 for linebacker. He had done the bench press at his pro day, and it was only really good instead of stupid good, like all the rest of his numbers were. So that immediately moves him into undraftable territory. So we can't take him in that first round. We got to drop him at least to 35.
Right.
I think.
I think based on that.
Yeah, right. I think Isaiah Simmons is a very good prospect, even without his athletic testing. Anybody that watched his tape knew that he was going to test well. I think what really shot his stock to what it is today is that even knowing that he was going to test really, really well, nobody expected him to test really, really well without actually breaking something. Like, everybody expected him to screw something up. There's always going to be something, right? And when the big thing with him was going to be how big is he going to show up and can he hold on to that athleticism? We've seen guys for years that come to the combine and gain 10, 15, 20 pounds, and they can't hold it. They can't hold that weight and maintain their athletic ability. Isaiah Simmons played at around 220 when he started at Clemson. He played there for most of his college career. He played around 230 last year in Clemson. He came into the combine at 238, perfectly fine. Running a 4.39 at 238, that's awesome. 39-inch vert, we'll take that. 11-foot broad. You can slow down a little bit, dude. We get it. You got it. We got the tools. The idea with Simmons is what you're going to do with him when you get to the pros, and that's going to really be the only hiccup is what is the defensive coordinator going to do with him? Because as great as his athletic testing is, a player is only going to be good as how he's used. And if you throw a guy into a bad situation, then he could play bad. I don't think Simmons has a bad situation. I think that Simmons' only real hold up getting into the NFL is getting to a defensive coordinator that doesn't know how to use him, and he plays really good at one position. And that's my only worry with him coming to Detroit, is that I feel like he would get pigeonholed into a position like just safety or just linebacker. My expectation would be he would fall into that Jared Davis role where he lines up as that spy on plays where you have a mobile quarterback. He's the blitzer. When the linebacker has to blitz, he'll occasionally drop into coverage, but that's not super valuable at 3rd overall. So that's my concern, is from a value perspective. If he comes to a team,
you're saying you don't know how we would use him, and based on how we would use him, it wouldn't be worth that level of a pick. I understand that because they're different players, but the last player I saw remotely similar to him was Minkah Fitzpatrick, and in Miami they didn't really use him right, but he still was a good player. But when he went to Pittsburgh, he blossomed. But I don't know if the Lions is the team that wouldn't know how to use him correctly. I think Matt Patricia would have too much fun with Isaiah Simmons.
I'm less confident in his ability to use him. I feel like it's not so much they don't know how to use him, it's that they do, but it's not how you would imagine it to be used. Their idea of what he should be used for is simply not that versatile. It's doing two things instead of all the things. You understand that?
Oh, I know. That's what you're saying. What you're saying is it's not the matter of using, it's the matter of maximizing the utilization of him. So in other words, like rather than saying that, hey, this game, he's going to kill people if you just leave him here at outside linebacker, they'll say, nope, we're going to put him over here in the safety spot, a little bit of inside slot, and take him away from what would be the best skill set to get the most production out of him. So I'm picking up what you're putting down.
And then week to week, that's got to be a week to week thing, right? You got to do that every single week when you have a guy like that. And I'm not sure the Lions are the team that can do that.
See, one of the reasons I looked at Isaiah Simmons was because I said that if for some reason this thing don't work out and the win now mandate holds true to where if they mess up, they out, he's a guy that you can still transition into any other defense. And I like that level of versatility when you can have a guy who can do that. But trust me when I say I am picking up what you're putting down. We'll bounce this one over to you, Jim. What question you got for MathBomb?
It's a little bit of a different question because a lot of times when we look at our people, we're like, man, that guy's really, really, really good, you know? And a lot of times from a national perspective, they don't think our team is that good. What I want to ask you is by the numbers, by the RAS system, how good are the Detroit Lions in comparison to the rest of the NFC North?
Ooh,
that's a great question, man. I wish I had put together way more numbers for that.
I know, right? Like I wasn't even ready for that one. I wasn't even ready.
So the Lions aren't terrible compared to the rest of the NFC North. We had talked offline about how Martin Mayhew, despite making some good and some bad moves, he created an offensive line that was one of the least athletic in the NFL by the time that he had left. That takes time to fix. And what the Lions have done since that time is they built that up. They drafted Taylor Decker. They brought in T.J. Lang. They brought in Frank Ragnow. Frank Ragnow is one of the most athletic centers to ever play football. That's fact. He had a 9.93 res, I want to say off the top of my head. They're bringing in athletic guys. And as much as we talk about the Patriots system, the Lions are basing their offensive line, and this will make sense the moment I say it, but they're basing their offensive line on the Philadelphia Eagles. That's the team that they're trying to build an offensive line like. And what do you know? First guy that they target in free agency coming from the Philadelphia Eagles. So they're trying to build a more athletic team. And this team had a lot of holes from a talent perspective, but from an athleticism perspective, it was even more. And then you look at guys like Tracy Walker and Will Harris and now Duran Harmon. Every safety that they brought in has been fast. It's all about speed on that back end. So it isn't so much that from an overall athleticism perspective, the Detroit Lions are changing. It's that they're doing different things than what we've seen before. And some of those things don't seem all that great. You know, a lot of people were making jokes over the last 2 years about the Detroit Lions picking those big, slow linebackers because of Jelani Tavai and, of course, Christian Jones. And it seems like everybody else they've signed since last year. So it's kind of hard.
Truthfully, yeah. Kennard, I mean, the list goes on.
Yep. It's kind of hard to beat that joke when they just keep doing it, right? But the idea isn't about a lack of speed, even though the trend looks like that. The idea is getting big guys with length, and the Lions have been getting guys that have that. Would it be nice if they also got guys that were fast? Yes, I think it would be a lot nicer if they also got fast and explosive guys instead of just big and lengthy. But it's different. The Bears have changed staffs, and they've been trying to build their athleticism more on their offense than their defense, kind of building from the inside out. They of course brought in Khalil Mack. That was a huge boon for them. The Packers are one of the most athletic teams in the NFL, and my Packers fans they follow me real closely because if that guy doesn't score an 8.5 or higher on RAS, they probably aren't drafted. I think they drafted. I think they drafted one guy who was under that last year, and it was the tight end they drafted in the 3rd round. And by the internal numbers that they were reporting from Packers scouts, he would have been well over that. So his combine numbers weren't as good, but the numbers they had, he probably would have been. So they're huge on athletic testing. And the Vikings are very similar to that too. So the Lions are doing some different things than the other teams in the NFL and NFC North, but not necessarily better or worse than anyway.
Got it. Okay. All right. We got a question from the chat. I'm going to toss it to next. I think it's a very good one. He says, what highly regarded prospect surprised you?
With a bad RAS score.
Derrick Brown's the one that immediately comes to mind just because Derrick Brown, I think everybody expected him to be one of the top 5 guys in this draft class. It didn't surprise me. I don't have him rated as high, but I didn't expect it to be as bad as it was, if that makes sense. I expected that to be a little bit higher, but this really wasn't like it was 5 point something. It wasn't like previous draft classes. It was 5.89. But it wasn't like previous draft classes where we've had guys that completely tanked, like Ja'Kai Polite last year, who absolutely tanked everything about the NFL Combine. But it wasn't like that. We didn't have any guys that really crapped the bed at the NFL Combine with their metrics perspective. We didn't really have that this year. So I'm kind of glad that we didn't really have that. We didn't have anybody that really bombed. We had a lot of guys that really surprised with what people were expecting them to get. Casey Tuhill out of Stanford wasn't expected to be all that athletic, and he had like a 9.75, some stupid high number. Evan Weaver out of Cal was a guy that a lot of people expected to measure really poorly. And he measured, I think, in the 7s. He measured pretty well. That was kind of the story of this year's Combine, is you had a lot of guys that overperformed rather than guys that underperformed.
And Rachel
Miss Rachel Marie Sports.
Go ahead.
She said, "Do you still think the Browns would go? Do you still think Brown would go in the top 10 based on the RAS score that you came up with? Do you think he still would go in the top 10?"
I don't. It doesn't happen all that often. I'm trying to remember the last time that we had. I'll pull it up and see if I can find. But I'm trying to remember the last time that we had a defensive tackle that went that high in the first round that didn't have a really good RAS score.
I know it wasn't Sue. Sue score had to be like 9,000. I mean, it had to be like, you know how Dragon Ball Z always had the little thing on the eye? It had to be like super, like unbelievable numbers coming into where it break the thing. Sue, when he came out that year, I was like, just watch Texas game. That's all you got to do.
BJ Raji back in 2009 was the last guy that 2009, and he played what? Nose tackle. That's what he played when he came to the NFL. BJ Raji became a Pro Bowler, but a Pro Bowl nose tackle, is that worth the 9th overall pick?
Nah,
so much for me.
Nah. That's a little too rich for my blood. All right, we'll bounce this one over to you, the Hook Cam. Let him get this question in the building. What you got for MathBomb, man?
So obviously, a lot of your analysis comes with pre-draft stuff and the Combine. I'm an offensive line guy. I'm a trenches guy. So I've always kind of looked at the Combine and been I felt like it was put on a pedestal, and I don't think it's ever been like crazy important for a player. Obviously, there's a ton of theories to it, but in your opinion, what is the like most applicable or most important event they do, and then what's the least important event they do? Just one that you're like, we could toss that out and forget about it because it doesn't translate.
For offensive line, man, that's cake.
Or just in general,
So it depends on the position, but offensive line is easy. You want to know what their shuttle time was.
Mm-hmm.
They like to hype up that 10-yard split because the 40-yard dash is the big event at the Combine. It's one of the only positions where they actually show you what that 10-yard split is when they're actually doing it on the TV. But you want to know what their shuttle time is. If an offensive lineman runs a shuttle time under 4.5, that's a guy you want on your football team. It's one of the most predictive individual metrics in all of NFL metrics analytics is the shuttle time and offensive line. Now that said, RAS is pretty good in that regard too for tackles and guards. It's and you're gonna laugh when I say this because I'm the inventor and the guy that pushes it, but RAS is almost worthless for centers. It doesn't have that much of a correlation that I've found. It's more it tells you more what scheme a team runs than it does the ability of an individual player, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, listen, y'all come with some good questions. And I'm not mad at them. Hey, we're gonna keep it coming. Let's go to Andrew.
Yeah, so just like Hook Cam, I'm all about the trenches, offensive line, defensive line. I think it really starts there. So my question is pretty much which players really stand out to you in the first round as far as offensive tackles and defensive tackles?
Yeah, offensive tackles, the easy one. See, this is what's nice about offensive tackles. The top 6 offensive tackles, in my mind, all scored an elite RAS. So Ezra Cleveland came in with a 9, and I'm not reading him in order of where I would rank him. I'm reading him in order of RAS just because I have that up, and that's the order they're in.
Okay.
So Ezra Cleveland came in, he had a 9.93, one of the highest RAS scores of all time. Mekhi Becton had a 9.85. He got hurt and didn't do all the measurements, but that's still, for his size, running the 40 that he did, that's incredible. Tristan Wirfs, people think might pop into guard, but at tackle, he had a 9.74. A lot of the guys you see flip over to guard from tackle, they're in that 8-7 range, and then it jumps when you go up to guard because guards generally aren't as big or athletic as tackles are. Austin Jackson out of USC, another super athletic guy, high 8s. Jedrick Wills in the mid 8s. Andrew Thomas in the low 8s. All these guys are super athletic, And there really wasn't anybody that bombed. The only guy that didn't get an elite score that's rated highly for tackles was Josh Jones out of Houston, and he didn't finish the agility drills where a lot of people expected him to do really well. And I also expected him to do really well, and it probably would have pushed his score a little bit higher. He was at 7.83, so just underneath that 8 that we look for tackles. And I think he would have jumped that if he had done the agility drills. Defensive tackles, not so much. We already talked about Derrick Brown a little bit and his disappointing time. The only other first-round defensive tackle that a lot of people are talking about didn't even measure. Kinlaw, he didn't measure at the combine. He was nursing an injury from the Senior Bowl.
Now listen, Math, listen. I was gonna do this on the video, but we here. You brought it up. I'm gonna go for it. I was gonna do a video that said that Javon Kinlaw reminds me of Robert Nadici. I watched this film over and over and over, and I swear I just kept saying Robert Nadici, and I was like, there were so many plays where he wasn't even sure what was happening. He just was going to the quarterback. And
it's funny that you mentioned that comparison, because that was my low end comparison for him. It was like, if he doesn't work out,
my God,
if he doesn't work out, that's what you get.
That's exactly what I noticed. I'm like, why have I feel like I've seen this before? And I went back to one of my old videos that I was going to post, but the draft popped up before I can get it out. And I was like, it's exactly Robert Nadici. I'm like, they're the same people almost. Like if he doesn't get the right training and stuff like that, that's what I saw.
Yeah, and it's funny because like his low end might be that, but his high end is somebody like Geno Atkins, a real penetrating interior disruptor, somebody that can really get after it. You know, they like to throw out Aaron Donald like that's a real comparison for anybody, but we'll keep it real and say it's more like a Geno Atkins. But like Derrick Brown has a much different type of floor ceiling type, because his ceiling is somebody like Damon Harrison, somebody who can disrupt every single run play and completely clog up that middle where nobody can do anything. And that puts you in those 3rd and long situations where you can get your pass rushers a little bit more play. And his low end is still a high end nose tackle. I mean, I can't even come up with a good one because nose tackles don't get as much play, but you know, his floor is much higher.
You had what's the Michael Pierce?
Yeah,
I know I'm forgetting a bunch of them, but yeah, they're meant to take up lanes. Here's a question from One Pride 40 in the chat. Before we bounce over to Nomis' question, he says, "What was Okudah's RAS, and would it benefit the Lions more if we drafted him over someone like Simmons?"
So Okudah came in with an 8.97 out of 10, which is very good. Anything over 8 is where you want to be. Okudah had ran that a 4.48 40, which is 73rd percentile. It's perfectly fine for a 40-yard dash. His explosion drills were off the charts. He had 11-foot 3-inch broads, one of the best broad jumps by any cornerback ever, and he did that. He didn't finish all of his drills. He got like banged his head or something. He wanted to play it a little bit safe, so he didn't run the agility drills. I don't think he would have had a problem there. The only reason his RAS wasn't higher was because he had like an 11 bench, which is I don't know if you have any D&D fans, but that's your dump stat for cornerbacks.
Yeah.
You don't really care all that much. And I'm not concerned about him from an athletic standpoint. I personally think that that's the better player for the Lions to pick over Jeffrey Simmons, because there's an immediate role for Jeff Okudah, and this team has a need at that outside cornerback spot, and the learning curve isn't going to be as steep because they're only going to ask him to do one thing: cover that guy. This is a man-based defense. That's what their defense thrives off, is having guys man up. The assignments are going to be very simple in year one, and Jeffrey Okudah is a fantastic prospect. So I think that from an athletic perspective, it's less that he's better than Simmons. You're not going to find anybody better than Simmons athletically in this class, but it's plenty good. There's no real significant concerns there, and I think that he would help the Lions from day one. Okay.
We'll bounce this over to Nomis. Nomis, what did you got for Mr. MathBomb?
Well, Mr. MathBomb, for your RAS chart, tell me, outside of Isaiah Simmons, who are some of the other linebackers that are like really, really good that based off your charts? I'm really interested in that.
Linebackers. So I mentioned Casey Toohill out of Stanford that overdid expectations at the combine. Casey Toohill is getting talked around as like a 6th or 7th round pick. I expect him to go maybe a little bit earlier on day 3. He's a 250-pound linebacker that ran a 4.62 and had a 39-inch vertical. Teams love those kind of numbers. Again, his only thing that he did bad was his bench, but he's got long arms. You know any defensive coordinators that like bigger linebackers with longer arms? You name any off the top of your head?
I mean, listen, we got what we got. I'm gonna leave it alone because people will tell you I'm gonna leave that alone. me and certain coaches, right?
Now, one of the better linebackers in this class though is Kenneth Murray out of Oklahoma, and he got hurt at the combine. He was running his second 40. He ran a 4.52 his first time. That's 96th percentile, and he looked disappointed as hell when he ran that. So he tried running another one, pulled his hamstring, and he was out for the rest of the combine. But he had a 9.89. Very similar numbers to Jeffrey Okudah in that he's fast and explosive and big for a linebacker, big enough anyway for a linebacker. So very, very good athletic player. A little bit on the low side for the Lions with that weight, with only, quote, air quotes, 241 pounds. They generally want guys 245 or bigger. Malik Harrison out of Ohio State, I don't think anybody expected him to measure all that well. He had a 9.43 for Raz, which is fantastic. He ran a 6.83 cone, which just blew my mind. I expected that to be in the mid-sevens or something like Jared Davis did. One of the guys to really pay attention to is Logan Wilson out of Wyoming. He had an 8.84 out of 10. He's a fantastic athlete, and that pops on tape. Another name is Willie Gay out of Mississippi State. A huge, superb athlete, really, really good athletic traits. They always show up on tape. You see it every time you turn on his plays and watch him go. Very explosive, very quick. Those are the guys I think you might see jump on draft day. Joe Bocci out of Michigan State. I got to get at least one of the Michigan guys out there. Bocci wasn't expected.
I see what you did. Go ahead.
He wasn't expected to test all that well either, but he had an 8.28. For the Lions, he's only 230 pounds, so he's not that bigger linebacker that they really like to put their trust in. But the Detroit Lions have showed some interest. They had, I think it was one of the only guys that they've FaceTimed with that we know of. The Lions have kept a pretty tight-lipped when it comes to the guys that they've actually kept in contact with, but he's one of the local prospects that they've talked to quite a bit. A little bit on the smaller side, not as lengthy as linebackers that they like, but maybe they're changing stuff. I don't know, but he's another guy to pay attention to.
Okay. Listen, if y'all don't know, we got on Mr. MathBomb, AKA, I'm going to botch his last name. I don't know why I suck at this. Lee Platte. Did I say it right?
Platty. Yep.
Platty. I'm going to get this right if it kills me, okay? Y'all know I suck at names, all right? It takes forever. I always have J-Mo correct me. So that's just the reality of it. Okay, so let me switch gears a little bit because I know that there's a lot of people that's got questions. I know Detroit's on Big Will got a question out there where he's wondering about where did Amani Oruwariye measure up on the Raz versus Okudah, because that's a person that I know that me and him have talked, and we both feel is going to get a chance to play before they take Okudah.
So Amani Oruwariye came with an 8.51 out of 10, which is really good. This is going to all sound familiar. I wish I could pull both these up for you. I might send these to you a little bit later, but
hey, please do. Please do.
Both of these players were big. Oruwariye is 6'1.5", 205. Okudah, very similar to that. Both of them ran high 4.4s. Oruwariye had a 4.47. Okudah had a 4.48. Both of them didn't run that great of their splits. Their splits were both pretty low. Both of them had really good explosion times. Oruwariye had really good agility drills. Okudah didn't measure. All of their metrics are very, very similar. Eerily so, you might say. One of the things to pay attention to with Matt Patricia and the way that he runs these is that top speed seems to play a little bit more of a role. So when you have a guy that runs a 4.48, that's really good, but that's not top tier speed. That's not that 3.38 that you want. When a guy doesn't run a great split, but he does run a really good 40, you end up with somebody that's actually going really, really fast at the edge of that 40. Measuring it out, just using math, you can get the miles per hour between the 40 or the 20 and the 40. Okudah was running 22.5 miles an hour at the end of his 40-yard dash. There's guys that you get that run 4.38 that don't hit that miles per hour because they're running it. They get up to speed so fast and then just maintain it. So don't be fooled by that 4.48 and think that ain't fast. It's just more build-up that you really want. And that seems to be the kind of guys that Matt Patricia is okay with taking.
Okay. Now, Andrew I'm gonna botch his name. Merklin. Did I say that right? Probably didn't. He says, Luke, can you please explain?
How do you get Merklin out of that?
I don't know, man.
You skipped the last 3 letters of the
Listen,
name.
listen. I don't be if my brain see it a certain way and it don't feel right, I don't be want to say it because then I don't want to tear it up too bad. Don't judge me, okay? You should see me try to pronounce my professor's name in theory, and I was like, I'm not gonna play with you. Can I get anything? He's like, just call me Mr. X. I was like, thank you, because I'm just not gonna happen. But he says, can you explain to people why you think they're taking Isaiah Simmons? I don't think that they're taking Isaiah Simmons because I want to think that it's because of what I believe Quinn said. Not only did he say it in his press conference video, he has been saying it repeatedly. He wants people to have 5 characteristics if he's going to select them, and he stands by it. And he put emphasis on 3 out of the 5 characteristics. And to me, he talked about the number one thing being the player has to have versatility. And so I went back and I looked at all his drafts, and I was like, how often did he really stick to that belief that he had to have versatility? He stuck to it more often than I was surprised. He wants somebody with a high football IQ. While I do respect Mr. MathBomb, and I do know that Okudah got a high football IQ, he doesn't have that level of versatility, I think, that they're looking for. So here's a guy with a high football IQ and Simmons and versatility. Then he wanted high character guys. You can't lose in that department because they both have high character. They want passionate players. They both are passionate players. He wanted competitive players, and they both are competitive. The only thing that I would give an edge to when it comes to Okudah is he is from one of the schools that Bob Quinn loved to take players from. Bob Quinn in his time here has taken a total of 7 Big Ten players in his drafts. And, you know, we know that Isaiah Simmons comes from the ACC, and Bob Quinn's only taken 3 players from the ACC, and all those were late round picks. So that part kind of scares me for the formula, but where he got back on track was when he gave that press conference. And he said whoever he selects in that 3rd pick needs to hit the ground running. He also said that once that pick come up, if he ain't got a trade by the time they on the clock, he ain't taking no phone calls. So you look up and see the Lions on the clock. We're taking our pick at 3rd, which is what I thought would happen. But that's why I think they're going to take him. His versatility, he meets all the 5 traits that they have. Whereas that's one, he can hit the ground running. I think that cornerbacks take a little bit more time to develop. That's just the way I see it. And I don't think we have enough pieces in place to help the cornerback really develop the way he wants. So that's why I think the value has to be there for them. Now, let me ask you this, Math, because this is one of the things that I was always curious when it came to the draft, and particularly about it was how does the like analytics help with predicting if a player is going to be good or not? Like how does analytics help lower the chances of drafting a bad player?
So we're talking specifically metrics analysis here when we're talking about that. You're talking to me, so that's what we're talking about.
That's right. Numbers guy. Let's get it.
The best thing when you're looking at metrics like Raz is you're looking at thresholds. So one of the questions I get asked by my super math nerds is about the direct correlation between it. You know, how does it correlate to draft position and stuff? And what you're really looking for is you're looking for guys that are over 8 on Raz, or you're looking guys that are under 5. And if they're not over 8 or under 5, you got a lot of wiggle room there. There's a lot of wiggle room with those guys between 5 and 8. Guys that are over 8, they hit at a higher rate. They bust at a lower rate. Most of your great players are there. Over half of Pro Bowlers and over 80% of first-round picks for almost every position are over 8. They're your elite athletes, and that makes sense. That makes total sense. And actually, the only position that doesn't hit that 80% threshold is defensive tackle, because we include nose tackles in that measurement, and nose tackles don't usually measure all that well.
Right.
So it helps when you're trying to predict draft position immensely. But when you're looking at whether a guy hits or whether a guy busts, having a low score has been a great predictor for busts. A couple of years ago, we had only 2 players that measured poorly coming into the draft in the first round. It was Charles Harris and Derrick Barnett. Both of them were edge rushers. and both of them had pretty low scores. Derrick Brown was just over 5, and Charles Harris was a little bit below that. And if you don't remember who those guys were,
I remember Derrick Barnett. Derrick Barnett, Tennessee, broke Reggie White's record, and Charles Harris, I believe, was Missouri. Was that right?
A monster spin move.
Yeah, that was his only move. That was my problem with him. I was like, if can he swim, rip, or pull, or something, yank him? That's the only move he had.
I'm a little sad that he didn't do well in the NFL just because that spin move was so sick.
It was, but that's the only. Listen, they waited for that. Even now, when he spin, they like, oh, here come the spin. Grab him, yep, and let him go. There we go. I'm real anal. If you watch my videos, I get real anal about the little things, and it's one of the reasons why I kind of chewed out Chase Young, because I was like, you're not going to run around everybody in this league. You're just not going to do it. You better find some pass rush moves, and it's one of the reasons why I have Nevin Gallimore as my highest rated D tackle. Because he does have an array of pass rush moves. He had the spin, the rip, the pull, and he takes on double teams like they don't even exist. So, listen, I'm with both of them. Derrick Barnett, he was a guy that I absolutely like. I thought he would have did well before we got Matt Patricia, but but nonetheless, I do remember both those players.
Yeah, but here's another example for you. Can you take a guess at how many tight ends have been drafted in the first round that had a RAS below 5? It's all the way back to 1987, remember.
We got to go back to 1987?
1987. How many of those guys you think had a score below 5 and got drafted in the first round?
0.
0.
Right. He's right. 0. Not a single one. And how about running backs? How many running backs do you think? The running backs in those positions.
No, running backs. We've had our fair share of some good running backs. You go from 87. You said right. So you got to count the Berries, the Emmets, the Adrian Petersons, and so I'm going to say a good 14.
14. You think right? Not that many, but enough that you're like, okay, there's quite a few. There has only been one running back drafted since 1987 that have below average metrics. It was Mark Ingram, who ain't bad.
Right.
He's solid.
Right.
But that's it. One. And running back's not even a position that it correlates as strongly. It does have a pretty good correlation for NFL success, but not that strongly. So you would expect that teams would maybe weigh that a little bit differently. But they don't. Teams draft athletic players. If a running back has poor metrics, you can just write it off. He's not going first. And it happened 2 years. Dalvin Cook. There was no way Dalvin Cook was going to fall out of the first round. Fell out of the first round because he tested poorly, which was shocking if anybody was paying attention. He hit the combine.
I was shocked when he didn't go in the first 2. I was like, he went to the second. Him and another guy I thought would have went in the first, and he fell out of the first was God, I'm trying to think. I'm trying to go back 2 drafts.
Geis?
Yes, Geis. How am I saying his name right? How am I LSU?
Juice. He pronounces it himself different ways too. So
I'm like, but yeah, I remember that. Tim Hutchinson says, off topic, Luke, what round do you think the kid you previewed, Bryce Huff, will go in? I got him rated as a 4th to 6th round guy. But I think if people respect what I saw, he can sneak up into the 3rd. I don't know if you did a RAS on him, not Math or not. Did you do one on Bryce Huff out of Memphis?
I don't think he had one. A lot of guys didn't have one this year because of obvious.
Oh yeah, right. The virus. All right, well listen, let's get back to the question from the panel, man. We're going to get right back around to it. Jim, what do you got for him on the second go around?
Yeah, I have another question about some of the draft picks in this draft particularly. Who are I'm trying to think of this. Who are later round picks that have rated higher on the RAS scale that the Lions could be looking at in the later rounds? So do you have that information just because of the
It's tough because of that, because there's a lot of uncertainty because of that. So I already mentioned Casey Toohill. I don't want to try to oversell him. He's got a lot of wrinkles. There's a lot of stuff that I don't think he's going to come in day one as like a 5th round pick and start or nothing, but he's definitely a guy the Lions have their eyes on. And he measured really well. Tanner Muse, if the Lions do pick up a safety, that's the kind of guy I would expect them to get. Another Clemson safety, big, super athletic. He had a 9.95 out of 10, so just below Isaiah Simmons.
That's really high.
So really, really good athlete. There's Jabari Zuniga out of Florida, had a 9.75 out of 10. He'd probably play that jack type of role here in this defense, taking over where Kennard would. One of the best testing athletes at defensive end. Defensive end's one of those positions you don't mess around. You want the athletes there. A guy that you really should be paying attention to, though, is Reggie Robinson out of Tulsa. He's one of the best man cover corners in this draft. And it's pretty scheme specific because he played pretty much all man. So when you have an NFL scheme, you got to do a little bit of both. You can specialize in one or the other, but you got to do a little bit of both.
Mav, I hate to cut you off, but let me ask you a question. Wasn't Robinson on our Senior Bowl team on the North?
I believe so.
Yep, because he's another guy that I target based on height, size, and skill set that the Lions would be looking at. So I'm just trying to make sure I remember something. Because see, some people think I just make stuff up, but I really do spend way too much time at this stuff. I really do.
Yeah, but he's a name you really want to pay attention to. Very good man cover corner. After Okudah and Christian Fulton out of LSU, I'm looking at Reggie Robinson. He's a top 5 man cover corner in this draft. So he's one of those guys I think the Lions are going to pay a lot of really close attention to. Another Michigan guy, Donovan Peoples-Jones. I don't think he goes as high as a lot of people have been predicting. I don't see a day 2 guy. I see more of an early day 3 type. Yeah, but he has a lot of traits the Lions like in a guy like that. And one of the most explosive wide receivers ever in terms of a testing perspective. His RAS is only a 9.63 only. That's still fantastic.
What do you mean only?
Right? Only 96th percentile. But both of his explosion drills, he had a 44.5-inch vert and an 11'7" broad, which are just crazy numbers. Those are both 99.9th percentile numbers.
It sounds like you're playing in the wrong sport with that kind of vertical.
I know, right?
Right. Well, he's only 6'1.5", but
well, look, let's speed this up a little. Let's get into it. Andrew, what's your question for him? Andrew.
Yeah, I actually kind of have 2 questions, if you don't mind.
Shoot for the start, man.
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I got 2 questions actually. So we all know that our coaching staff coached the Senior Bowl, which is kind of pretty big and an advantage for us since, the whole virus stuff went on. What players from the Senior Bowl are you looking at that the Lions could target? And then also, I'm very interested in Damon Arnette because obviously, he was opposite of Okudah, and I kind of want you to just talk about him too, if you could.
Sure. I love the Senior Bowl. It was actually a lot of fun this year. It's one of the, obviously, like you said, it's a big advantage to be able to go to the Senior Bowl. Everybody talks about those underclassmen, and those are usually the bigger named guys. But the seniors, those are the guys that last in the league. The Lions got a really close look at a bunch of guys. Bradley Anai out of Utah didn't measure out that well. He measured out with a straight flat 5 RAS, which is actually higher than what I expected him to measure. He doesn't have that length that the Lions like in their edge rushers, but he's extremely assignment sound. This guy will do exactly what you tell him to do when you tell him to do it. If you want him to be over there at a specific time, he will be there at that time to do whatever you tell him to do. He did that when he was at Utah for years. He's a really good player. The Lions love that type of player, even if he doesn't have those top-tier athletic traits. I'm going to toot my own horn a little bit. Jason Strobridge out of North Carolina. The Lions love Jason Strobridge. He was one of the guys that they were yelling at a lot about speed versus power when it comes to pass rushing. They were specifically talking to him about that. Measured out really athletic for a defensive tackle, but he's 275 pounds. He's a defensive lineman. He's an edge at that 5 technique. He's played a little bit lower and he's played a little bit higher. When he came to the Senior Bowl, I think he was 267 at the Senior Bowl. He played at 285. And prior to the Senior Bowl, during my Senior Bowl write-up, I had said, I think that Jason Strobridge is the kind of guy that's going to lose some weight. He's going to come in and try to take on that defensive line role, that edge, that 5 tech, rather than try to beef up and become a defensive tackle. So I was really happy that he had done that just for me. He was doing that just for me. He was reading my writing.
That was all for you. He has you solely in mind.
But he is a perfect fit for this defense. He has good length. He has really good size, big hands, a lot of power to him. The staff is really high on him. He might even sneak into day 2. He's just like Bradley and I. He's a guy that probably would go to day 3 by most people's boards because most people rate their boards based on NFL as a whole. But teams, they do team as a whole. They're looking at just them. And those are 2 guys I think the Lions are probably going to have higher on their boards than most teams do. Now,
let me ask you this.
To answer your other before
I forgot he did have 2 questions. My bad.
Yeah, I don't want to skip out on Damon Arnette.
Yeah,
I don't want to miss that specific question. Damon Arnette, you already mentioned, was opposite Okudah. There were concerns about his speed coming into the combine. He ran a 4.56, which is just about average. It's below average according to Raz, but it's 4.7. So if he had ran a 4.55, it would have been just above average. So right about average for 40-yard. But he ran a 1.66 10 split, which is terrible for a cornerback. That's really, really slow for get off. For the Detroit Lions, that's not even the biggest problem. The problem with the Detroit Lions is his arms were only 30 inches long. That's really poor length, especially for a guy that's just about 6 foot tall. He's just under 6 foot. He doesn't have a lot of length, and he doesn't have that speed and explosiveness to make up for it. I've heard that there's some injury concerns. I've even heard some maturity concerns that I don't really put any weight in it, but I'm mentioning because they do exist. But I'm more concerned about the fact that he lacks length than I am the athletic concerns as far as fit for Detroit.
Okay, thanks, man.
All right, J Mo, what you got for him round 2 of this?
All right.
Oh,
So
there you go. I was like, what happened to J Mo?
I'm not me. I basically ask every person we bring on who do one of the websites. I always ask them this because I think it's very serious for the Lions. One, because I didn't check what was TJ Hockenson's RAS score, and what do you think his role will be in the offense for the Lions this year?
So Hockenson had a really good RAS. He didn't run the greatest 40-yard dash, so people were down on his athletic traits, especially with Noah Fant just blowing everything out of the water. But Hockenson ran a 4.7 in the 40-yard dash, which is still 80th percentile for a tight end. We've been so spoiled with all these guys running the 4.5s and stuff that we think that's like normal, and it's not at all. But he had great explosiveness, great agility for a tight end. He came in with a 9.19 out of 10, which is fantastic. Almost 92nd percentile.
Exactly.
Really, really good. His role for this offense is a little bit tough. When Darrell Bevell came in, there was a lot of people talking about, oh, we're going to have that Jimmy Graham role. But, like, that's not Hockenson's game. That's not what he does. That's not the kind of guy that he is. He isn't that guy that's just going to run up the seam every play and beat you with his size. He's a very physical player. He likes to get dirty with people. He likes to use his body to box guys out. He's a very good internal receiver. He runs those inside routes, those crossers. He's okay taking a hit. And you guys are going to hate this at first, but let me elaborate. As far as role, I kind of think of something similar to how Brandon Pettigrew was used. And that sucks because Brandon Pettigrew dropped like everything and he got hurt all the time and his speed just tanked. But when you have a guy that's a reliable outlet for your passer, you can do a lot with that because you have a receiver like Kenny Golladay on the outside who can muscle anybody for any catch. And then you have somebody who's reliable on the inside who you can expect, I'm going to throw this over the middle and that guy is going to catch it. And he's going to get me 10 to 15 yards every single time, regardless of how covered he is. He's going to catch that. And if I can't, I'm on a short yardage situation. I only need to get 2 or 3 yards. You can get those 2 to 3 yards, have him run a hitch, have him run a little short out route, and actually beat somebody. And that's where the difference comes in between Brandon Pettigrew, is that Hockenson still has that explosion and that speed to actually beat people on those shorter routes and do something with them and actually get some yards after the catch. So from a route perspective, that's the kind of role that I would expect him to have, is taking a lot of those inside routes and some of those short
what about from a
outbreaking
production
routes
perspective?
Well, you want to have
What
these
about from a production perspective?
second year tight end with a high draft pick. You want to set that floor at 600 yards and 7 touchdowns. That should be your floor, right? That's a Trey Burton in a good year kind of role. So you want to hit at least that coming into your second year. But second and third years when tight ends make that big leap. So fans, we got a top 10 tight end. We want to see those top tier Jimmy Graham, Rob Gronkowski, Jason Kelsey. We want to see those type of numbers. I'm not so sure that we're going to see that right away, not in this offense. That's more a Darrell Bevell thing than the TJ Hockenson thing, though. I think he's going to be very productive. I think he's going to do very well in his role. The numbers might not be there just because that's not how this offense generally runs. But maybe they do. Maybe they change it up. Darrell Bevell is a talented play caller, and he is dynamic enough to be able to take advantage of his players' strengths. So maybe we see them focus more on it. But until I see it, I'm not going to say that's what's happening.
I mean, listen, I think that's a fair question, and I think it's a fair response too. All right, we're gonna bounce this on over here to Mr. Real, round 2. What you got for him, man?
All right, so it's confirmed Hockenson is the next Pettigrew. Just gonna put that out there.
Nah, he did not. Okay, hold on. Wait. So,
I'm just messing around, guys. Chill out. All right.
MathBomb, listen. So me and Real had a debate that you should never take a tight end in the top 10. And we had this whole debate about it. Was so fun. We did it on his channel, so if you want to see it, you want to check it out on his channel. But he been hitting me with that running joke. Oh, the tight ends confirmed he's been hit me with the little jokes there. I'm just telling. We both agree. We think that he's going to be good, but he just think that the value wasn't there for the tight end. So just really quick, because you just touched on the idea of tight ends in the top 10. Is it a bad idea, good idea, based on the data?
It's just like taking a running back in the first round. If you have a roster that can support taking that kind of a pick, then do it. I don't think the Lions had that roster in 2000.
Okay.
Interesting. Oh, okay.
Everybody
I'd love to get your input. If you have time, during this quarantine and you're just absolutely bored out of your mind, I'd love for you to, listen to our debate and get your input. That'd be awesome. But as for the question, as for the question I have, so I just wanted to know, how frustrating has it been for you to not be able to make a RAS, or maybe, have a hard time making a RAS for the players that have skipped the combine and then had their pro days canceled due to the COVID outbreak?
Man, I'm dying. I've got so few. It's such a pain. I just hit 1,000 players with a score this year, and it sounds really good. It's not. My numbers are a little bit padded this year because of some of the stuff I did to branch out, expecting that I would hit well over 2,000 players with a score this year. I didn't. I pulled in a couple hundred numbers just from guys that went to the CFL International Combine, guys that are from like Japan, Norway, Brazil, a bunch of other different countries. I got scores for those guys. Guys that went to like Illinois State, nothing. Guys that went to Arizona, nothing. I got nothing from these guys. The guys that went to actual, NFL type colleges, nothing from them. It's been really frustrating. Obviously, there's only 250 something players that are going to get drafted. I'll probably have scores for almost all of them, with the exception of the big name guys like Kinlaw that skipped out. We don't have Chase Young. We don't have Joe Burrow. We don't have Tua Tagovailoa, although I didn't expect to get his anyway. We missed out on a lot of players that I really would have liked to get numbers for, and that's frustrating to no end. My biggest frustration was that James Prochet didn't get to finish his pro day because he was very, very close to not being below average for RAS. And that would have made me so ecstatic because I love him as a player, but knew he was going to test poorly.
At least you honest, though.
And he did. He got a 4.07 RAS. His agility times were terrible, even though that's one of his strengths on tape. His vertical was 34.5, which I did not expect him to hit anything higher than like a 32. He's a little dude. He's not very explosive or quick or fast, but he's got some of the best. If you haven't watched his highlight reels, man, go watch that dude's highlight reels just to see the kind of crap that he get away with that don't make any sense. My biggest comp for him has been Danny Amendola. But I bring up this long-winded explanation of a guy that I love because I wasn't able to get a complete score on James Prochet because of all of this stuff. And that is so frustrating to just not get that whole picture when you want it.
All right. You got a follow-up question to that?
Yeah, I do. The follow-up question would be, how do you think that affects the Lions? Do you think that they might actually have a advantage because of the Senior Bowl that they coached, and maybe like other coaches might not have that, and since they don't have the pro day and maybe not combine numbers, that we might have an advantage? Or do you think that we are all kind of stuck in this situation where we don't have enough information?
So that's a two-prong answer to that. So you already hit on the one. The Lions have an advantage because they have the Senior Bowl. They got to get up close and personal with a lot of these guys. They got to work with a lot of these guys. They're not sitting here FaceTiming guys and just taking their word for it. They're not watching these trash pro day videos that are getting sent out where guys are running 4.7s and saying they're running 4.3s. They're not relying on any of those things. They had these guys up close. They saw the coachability of these players. And that coachability is something that really gets lost. A lot of the metric stuff, I love that, obviously. I love my numbers. But one of the things that people miss out when they don't do these pro days is they don't have those position coaches going to those pro days and putting these guys through drills, seeing how they respond when they tell a guy something that he's not used to hearing, seeing how they respond when he gives him negative criticism, when he gives him positive criticism. How does a guy bounce back from a bad play? They don't get to see any of those things. And as nice as these pro day videos are, where they get to go out and say whatever they want about whatever they measured, you know, as fun as those are as fans who have nothing to go on right now, for a coach, that stuff's useless if they don't have that supporting information that's like, what can this guy actually do if I tell him to do something? For the Lions, that's a huge deal, and they miss out on that. So good teams with good coaches can find ways around that. They have methods to be able to get some of that from afar, to be able to show them tape, and you can still do that through FaceTime and through other methods where you can say, tell me what's going on this play. What did you do wrong? What would you do to fix that? You can at least get part of that picture. Matt Patricia's not a dumb dude. And I joke by saying, you know, good coaches and kind of making a snide lean towards the Lions, not so much.
I mean, you ain't like you're lying, but I'm going to leave that alone.
But to that extent, though, Matt Patricia is a smart guy, and he's definitely worked with technology. And that whole bridge is just a problem with everybody right now. Everybody has that limitation. And good coaches, smart coaches, savvy coaches, and unfortunately for a lot of people, younger coaches are going to find some ways around some of those limitations. So we'll see what it's this draft was already fascinating before all the craziness. So I'm here for it.
Awesome.
All right. Listen, we'll roll this on over here to you, Jim. I mean, let's hit that round two, Jim. What you got for him?
Okay. The RAS is an athletic measure. So when you do this, we're just talking about that, right? Because a lot of guys with analytics, they think that, you know, these people are human beings too. So it doesn't take into account mind, mental state, or heart, or
you can't measure heart.
Work ethic, stuff like that. Has there been players that you guys have measured that had a lower RAS score that actually produced better in the NFL than you thought they would?
Yeah, that happens almost every year. And I usually have my guys that didn't measure well that still do well in the NFL. I didn't have anybody in 2019, which is frustrating when you cover analytics so deeply, because I didn't have anybody that could go, look, I understand what you're saying because I also like this guy who didn't test well and I think he'll do well. So last year I didn't have that. So I seemed like that. Nope, it's all numbers. But I got Prochet, so I'm good this year. I got Bradley and I've still got my guys. It's all good.
You got your guy.
Okay. So there are guys that produce at the NFL level. I mentioned before that there's a pretty decent correlation for a lot of these positions. And it's important to understand that without anybody coming in that didn't measure well, that also did well, that correlation doesn't mean anything, because you have a success bias that's built in. So you have guys like Jarvis Landry. And I always throw this out because it's one of my favorite ones. But anybody want to give a guess what Jarvis Landry's RAS was?
When he came out?
When he came out, it's out of 10, 0 to 10.
I think he's probably I'm gonna say 6, because I think he had that last season. He had a good last season, or was it the year before? I always get those 2 seasons mixed up, because I know the first year he was like, oh, Flash, and then it was like those last 2. One of those last 2 he had a really good. I'm gonna go 6.
6. So we had a 5 and we had a 6. Y'all ready? 0.27 out of 10.
Yeah, I ain't see that one coming at all.
0.27. He had one of the worst RAS scores of all time. I had a friend of mine who did all of the combine measurements, and he had a higher RAS than Jarvis Landry. He scored worse than him in every single drill, but he was taller and he weighed more, and those are still scores that come in. His best test, Jarvis Landry's, his best test was the bench, which was only 38th percentile. His second best test was his broad jump, and it was 9th percentile. He measured terribly. But it's important to understand, and this is another part that you have to take into consideration. He measured hurt, which is a bad idea. He had a hamstring injury at the combine, and he measured anyway. Hamstring injuries, for those that don't know, is the dog ate my homework of NFL injuries when it comes to the draft process. Guy runs a bad 40, he blames his hamstring. Jarvis Landry's was pre-existing. We knew about it beforehand, so it was his dog actually did eat his homework. Let me ask you Let me ask
His
you a
dog
less
actually
surprising.
did.
Let me ask you a less surprising one. Anquan Bolden. What do you think Anquan Bolden scored?
Now I know Anquan Bolden was one of them guys when he came out. I was extremely high on, and I know that it was a lot of rumblings after the combine that he didn't go as fast as I thought, and they say that his hips were stiff. Seeing how Jarvis Landry's was, I would have hoped that the numbers gave him a higher one, but
he's bigger. He's got a little bit.
He
of a
is
jump 'cause he's
bigger.
bigger.
So I would go. I'm gonna stick with my 6 on this because I feel like, but I knew when he came out, he was better than what they were rambling about. I'm gonna go 6.
Yeah, Anquan Bolden had a 3.36 out of 10.
Mm.
But here's the thing, and this is where it's important to understand the difference between just taking the numbers and taking nothing else. When you watch Anquan Bolden play, does he win because he's fast?
Nope.
No. Does he win because he's quick? No.
Nope.
That's 5 drills right there. That's the 40 and the splits, the short shuttle and the 3-cone. That's half of his measurements right there. Now, Anquan Bolden can be explosive, but that's not how he wins either. Anquan Bolden wins because when that ball is in the air, it's his ball.
Would you say you hating at your heart?
Yeah. He didn't win like a traditional. He wasn't a speedster, and he wasn't even a traditional possession receiver. Anquan Bolden was the strongest from a receiver perspective, the actual art of getting a ball out of the air. He was the strongest receiver I've ever seen. And I don't know if you guys ever made it down to training camp when Anquan Bolden was here, but it was like hearing a gun go off every time the guy caught a ball. And that's usually bad. That's usually a bad thing. You don't usually want to hear that ball hit. But it wasn't bouncing off his hands. That was just him clapping both his hands on that ball and damn near breaking it every single time. The guy was a monster. So he didn't need to win in those ways. And it's important.
I love Anquan Bolden, man. I love him. I thought that he had it all, and he was a guy that I wanted the Lions to take, and I knew everybody was like, "Oh, he didn't do so well," and I was like, "But I watched him play. He's literally like the second. Like to me, the first thing that came to mind when I watched him without the speed, it was Terrell Owens. Like it's my ball, get out the way." And afterwards, if you want to try to tackle me, get your popcorn ready. That's how I felt when I watched him. We'll bounce it on over to you, Mr. Cam. What you got for him?
What's going on? So my big question is, sorry, I remember what I was going to ask. My biggest question is, again, going back to the O-line and not exactly Lions focused. I'm sorry, but maybe it does a little bit. Mekhi Becton is a guy that I watch. When I watch the game film on him, the dude is just a savage. His pass pro looks good. He reach blocks. He finishes. Everything that a big guy like that I don't think should be good at, he is, especially with his wide zone and his technique on that. What is it with – at what point did he get that tag for future bust? Because I can't really tell media-wise where the true numbers lie, who thinks he's going to be a bust and who thinks he's going to be good. But what do you think about him, I guess, and where do you think if he is going to be a bust, where do you see that happening?
So it's not from an athletic standpoint. From an athletic standpoint, there are no concerns. You don't have 364-pound guys that run a 5.1. That doesn't happen.
Insane. 40 was scary.
It's nuts. And see, as much as we talk about that weight, he's 6'7" running a 5.1. There are literal physics that tell you shouldn't be able to run that fast, and he did. Now, let me tell you a number that really impressed me. He had a 23 bench. Now, that ain't a great number. It's not an amazing number.
But
let me tell you why.
Long arms.
He has 35 and 5/8 inch long arms, and he benched 23 times. That's incredible.
That's
now, general layman's, they don't understand, but there's actual physics behind the bench press. And the bench press, I mentioned it as a dump stat for corners. It is for some positions. Quarterbacks don't even do the bench 99% of the time. But for an offensive lineman, it's a big deal. But it's less about how many reps you get and how many reps you get in relation to your arm length. And for a guy with those kind of arms to get 23 is nuts. That doesn't happen. Yep. And he's just crazy. So it's not from an athletic standpoint. He's an extremely athletic dude. I think the concern is going to be, can his body hold up at the pro level? Guys that are that big, they tend to have back problems. They tend to have knees and joint problems. Carrying a lot of weight, moving around, and then trying to power through other people, they tend to have problems like that. I think that's going to be a legitimate concern. Getting hurt at the combine probably didn't help in that area.
True.
I don't see much of a bust there for me personally.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. Like every time I see it, and I know Luke and I have talked. Luke,
Yes.
You're not like a big like he's going to be a bust, but Luke did say like he's one of the guys who worries me, right, Luke?
Yep, yeah, he has the highest chance for bust for me, and it's just because of the sheer size. Usually, guys that big don't last long. Knee problems, foot problems, injuries either snuff them, or they get so over hyperextended they get back problems. So it scares me at how big he is, because it's like dude, you literally can take up like 2 spots, but when you're going up against people, you so big. I'm just trying to figure out how do you do this from game in to game out, down at the down. So it scares me. It really does.
Yeah, and I'm a Patriots fan, so I instantly think of Trent Brown whenever I see Mekhi Becton. That's the first thing that comes to mind, purely because of size. And what Coach Skarnecki was able to do to Trent Brown was make him one of the best run blocking guys in the league, at least that year. I'm not 100% sure I do with the Raiders this year, but that's the first guy I think of. So, but again, he had issues with the Patriots that year. He didn't start all 16, but he was healthy for the playoffs. Second kind of follow-up was like, where's your top 3 tackles at? Because there's Andrew Thomas is the top 1 or 2 tackles for me, and I feel like nobody talks about him. And maybe I'm just not looking in the right spots, but just kind of wanted your opinion on, your top tackles.
Yeah, it's weird that people aren't talking about Andrew Thomas as much as they should be, because he was talked about as like the top 3 guy before the draft season actually started, and then he just kind of slid, and I can't figure out why. There's no injury concerns there. There's no athletic concerns there. There's no, he's got to flip inside to guard crap like there is with Wirfs and Wills. I definitely have Becton up there. I don't tend to go 1, 2, 3 with a lot of my position groups. I tend to kind of grade guys in tier. And I mentioned I have six guys in that top tier. But I kind of named off some of them. If I had to put a 1, 2, 3 kind of top 3 guys that I would want, the sheer upside of Becton makes him worthy of being in that top group. The versatility of Tristan Wirfs makes him probably the next guy in that group. And then, gosh, between Andrew Thomas and Jackson, Cleveland's got a bit more risk. So does the Houston dude. Are you not
a big Jedrick Wills guy, or is he up there too?
He's not for me. I've gotten beat by a lot of guys in the past that offensive tackles where they get out in space and then they dominate. Eric Flowers, that got him in the first round. Was just being able to dominate guys in space. And I'm not going to say I was an Eric Flowers guy, but I've missed before. So you tend to take a little bit riskier or less risk with guys that you've hit on before. And I'm not making a comparison between the two. They're not
Get down in space is scary as an O lineman, man. Whenever there was a screen and I was like out, if there's nobody around me within like 3 yards, I black out. I might as well just fall down the field and trips over me because it's scary out there.
Yeah, but I mean, he's built so differently than a lot of offensive tackles. And it's a really hard evaluation, and it's kind of hard to explain in depth. It's one of those weird combine conversations where you're talking about like leg diameter and things like that. The guys, he's just built different than a lot of the guys in this draft. There's been some concerns about his football intelligence. He had a really low Wonderlic.
Becton?
No, we're talking about Wills.
Okay.
He's got a really low Wonderlic, and people kind of blow that out of perspective. But I don't know if anybody's ever taken a Wonderlic, but it's an easy test.
Yeah, but that's not fair, though. Let's be fair.
No. Well, for most positions.
Frank Gore had a 6.
Right.
You ain't gonna tell me he's stupid.
No, for most positions. And the reason it's dumb is because anybody with learning disabilities is going to bomb. It's going to bomb.
Right. Because
it's all logic puzzles and crap. So there's always that concern too. But you want your offensive linemen to be smarter. And I saying that extremely loosely. I'm not trying to be derogatory. The concern I have with Wills is that wasn't the first time I've heard that brought up. The whole Wonderlic stuff, to me, that's just kind of like, oh, funny. Yeah, guy had a high one, guy had a low one. But it wasn't the first time I had it brought up. And I can't repeat the exact words that were used because the guy that told me he's an actual NFL scout, but he's a very big Auburn fan. So he's not exactly impartial. But the terms that were used essentially were that he is not a very cerebral football player.
Interesting.
So
you cleared that up pretty well.
right. I think Wills is phenomenal from what I've seen on film. I think I've seen like 2 games where I was like, he looked like he was a little bit lost in his assignment when he had to maybe block down, or maybe they had to like do like a scoop drill where they get into the linebacker. But for the most part, he was lights out from what I can tell. And dang, he said he wasn't that kind of. I kind of, like I said, I'll always take the information that I get and compare it to what I see and see how I can find the middle ground between them. But listen, I want to kind of give people in the chat a chance to kind of hit you with some questions.
Sure.
If y'all did not see, I did post his website. So if you want to look at anybody's score, the website is there. I'll repost it again. So you can see it again, and then that way you can hit it, because I don't want to keep him too long. He was so cool to do this, and I want to make sure he comes back. So I don't want to scare him the first go around. Okay.
Thanks, Gerd.
Hey. So if you could, any questions you have for him, please ask it now. And what we'll do is we'll take those questions. I'm posting the link again, so if you want to go and look for yourself, you can. Now, one question I do see that kept coming up the entire time, over and over and over again, is who do you want? Like, I've seen so many people post that in there, like, who do you want the Lions to take?
Ooh. Like in the first round or overall?
In the first round.
I can go for days, man. I'm a big Okudah fan. I talked to you guys offline. Okudah is one of the smartest players that I've ever covered. I know we're just talking about intelligence, but when it comes to the type of preparation that goes into being a football player, a lot of fans don't really get to see that. When they did interviews with Jeff Okudah, they were asking him about different defensive schemes that he thought he could play in. And this guy was rattling off the defensive coordinators, the defensive position coaches, the players, the actual roster makeup of every team that he could. A friend of mine who was at the Combine said that he named the position coaches for 18 separate teams. How many guys are going to go into a job interview that well prepared? I mean, that's insane. Extremely intelligent football player. If I was making my pick at 3 or hopefully with a trade down, that's the guy that I would take in the first round. Outside of the first round, God, there's so many different guys that I would get. I mentioned James Prochet. Like I mentioned James Prochet. That's my dude. Love James Prochet. Wish I could get him in
Is that the receiver from Louisiana Tech?
No, SMU.
SMU, okay. I know it's like a horse or something.
Yeah, he's a lot of fun to watch. Go out and watch his highlight reels. Even if you don't care for him as a player, his highlights alone are worth taking a flyer on. Nobody likes to hear about it, but punters, we've got 2 good punters in this draft. The Lions need a punter. They're probably going to draft one. Michael Turk out of Arizona State, and Braden Mann out of was it A&M? I forget where he's from.
But those are 2 guys. Man too.
Yeah. Keep up with your punters are people too. I actually have Raz on punters.
Punters are people too.
So Cesar Ruiz out of Michigan is a fantastic player. He's either the first or second interior offensive lineman, depends on who you ask. Really, really good player. Prime target for the Lions in the second round. Potentially a trade up. I think he'll fall to 35. Matt Hennessy out of Temple's really, really good. Another really good interior offensive lineman. Probably the only 2 without risk interior offensive lineman. Lloyd Cushenberry's really, really good, but he's injured right now. There's some risk that he might not play early. Eno Benjamin out of Arizona State is really fun to watch. He didn't run a really good 40. He's not a super elite athlete, but he just bounces off of everybody. He's a lot of fun to watch. And a name I butcher, Sewo Olonilua out of Texas Christian, another big back. He might come in as a fullback. I think that you could put him at running back, at that power runner, and just let him bowling ball his way past people as a rotational runner. Really, really like him on the offensive side of the ball. I mentioned Bradley Anai and Jason Strobridge that I really like. I can do this all day. Just cut me off whenever I get too far.
No, listen. I know one of the things that I definitely gonna want you to do, because I'm working on it right now. I'm literally, while we're doing this, I'm waiting on the video to render so I can get it out. I did a complete breakdown of why the Detroit Lions are taking Isaiah Simmons, and I would love for you to see it when it drops, so you can you can check it out and be like, maybe got a good point there. I don't quite see it that way.
But make sure you tag me, man.
I'm definitely am. Soda Boy wants to know, how do you feel about the Lions drafting Tua?
I don't. So
right.
let me go into why. Let me go into why. I really like Tua on the football field. I would probably have him as my QB2 if I didn't take anything else into consideration. But I do. I'm not a doctor and I'm not a surgeon. I'm not an ortho. But I am a trend analyst. I actually started my math stuff. Didn't start in any traditional sense. I was a cryptologist in the Navy. My job.
You might have to break down what that is for some people, because i.e. me, what a crypt? What?
I know what the cryptology is.
Right.
I have no clue. What is a cryptologist?
So it's code breaking. It's codes.
Oh, okay. All right.
So
all right.
It's pattern analysis. So when I'm looking at stuff, I'm looking at patterns.
Don't judge me. I'm honest. I told you I don't know.
Hey, it's all good. But the whole point is it's all about trend analysis. And one of the things that really comes up when it comes to guys with injuries is that the best predictor for future injury is past injury. You never want to look at a guy that's had one severe injury and be like, that guy's going to get hurt at every step of his career, because it's one injury. It's not that big of a deal. But if you have multiple injuries, they start piling up. That's when you really start getting concerns. On tape, Bo Scarborough was not a 7th-round player. He just wasn't.
Right.
I'm not going to say he was a 1st-round player. I don't think he was, but he was definitely not a 7th-round player. But you know what else he was? He was a guy who had never finished a season of football without getting hurt. He got injured every single year, high school and college. So it matters. Being hurt matters. And as much as we talk about, and Karen's another one. He's been hurt at every stage of his career. But you look at that, and then you look at a guy like Tua. The hip injury was really, really bad. It's one severe injury, but it was a really, really bad severe injury. Now, maybe he's healed from that. Maybe he is good. Maybe he's got that medical green light right now. But he also had ankle injuries. He had a knee injury. I think he had a shoulder injury at one point, wrist injury, I think. He had several injuries before that had just started to pile up. And you start looking at that, and it's a high contact sport. It's not a kind of guy who would take a risk. Let me give you another example. Netane Moody out of Utah is the best guard prospect in this class. Period. Bar none. Fight me. I don't care. Best guard prospect in this class.
I ain't watched enough film to fight you. But
here's the thing. I wouldn't draft him in any round. And I love his tape. His tape is way up there. It's one of the best guards I've ever covered when it went on tape. But he's had an Achilles injury and a Lisfranc injury in the last couple of years. Both of those are severe injuries that sap a player's explosiveness. They have long-lasting effects to a player's ability to play at a high level. And that's back-to-back years where he had those injuries. Not touching him. And I love his tape. Love his tape. And I wouldn't draft him in any round. It has to be taken into consideration when you're seriously considering a player. Now, a lot of guys like to say, I'm not a doctor, so I don't really pay attention to it. Teams do. Teams pay attention to it.
They should. I mean, I can go down a list of people too. I remember when Todd Gurley came out, and I have a buddy. He's a Cowboy fan. He just kept telling me, Todd Gurley, and I was like, I'm like, that injury is serious. Oh, Todd Gurley. I'm like, I promise you, it's not gonna hold up long. And you see it, break it down little by little, and he comes back to me, maybe like 2 days ago. He goes, I'm not saying you was right about Todd Gurley. I'm just saying that could happen to anybody. And I'm like, I'm telling you, man, it's hard to keep doing that from time to time. So, Nicholas Aaron says, if a quarterback is taking 1 and taking 2, Simmons, Young, or still trade back, like what would you do?
Trade back. Ideally, if he was in 1 and 2, so Young. So here's the thing. Everybody loves Chase Young. They think he's this no doubt number 1 prospect. He's my number 1 prospect, and I think he's an easy pick if the Lions land at 3 and he somehow lands there. But, he's not the only player that I would do that with, that I would consider a surefire prospect. And with this team has a lot of holes, man. This isn't a team that's built right now to win 12 games and go deep in the playoffs. We got a lot of things to fix. So if I'm sitting there at 3 and Chase Young's still on the board, that means those trade packages are going to be a little bit meatier than they might have been if it was quarterback 1, Chase Young 2.
I see what you're saying. You're saying that you can rear its ugly head a little bit faster for it. Okay. All right. Chris Cashbar, he says, what is the numbers on LSU running back? He's talking about Clyde Edwards Hilliard.
Yeah.
Okay.
Love him. Love CEH, man. I hate saying his name because it's long. You get past 3 syllables. You're trying my patience.
Right. You see my struggle right now. Can't Lee. I'm plate. I'm struggling.
I worked to pronounce them. It took me a while to get Tagovailoa correct, but I love big fans. I love big names. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is a great name, but it doesn't roll off the tongue, man. He only came out with a 5.45 out of 10. He had great explosion drills, elite in both categories, 95th and 86th percentile for his explosion drills. Ran a 4.6. He's not super fast. He's really small, really short rather than really small, and he doesn't have a lot of length. He only has 29-inch arms. His hand size is okay, so you don't have to worry about fumbles being too much of an issue. Fantastic pass catcher out of the backfield. There's a lot of versatility to his game, a lot of things you can do with that guy, even though he's short. But he's not really dynamic when he has the ball in his hands. You can do a lot with a guy like that because you can get him in space and get him to a place he can get the ball really easily. He's a good fit for an offense like this because he's going to be in a lot of those situations. But I'm not sure that the upside's going to be there. What's that Patriots back that always does okay, and then he got a big contract with Tennessee? I'm blanking his name. Deion Lewis. Similar to that type of player style-wise, where you can get great production out of the guy if you have him in the right scheme with the right production. But I'm not sure you're ever going to be like, man, I got to draft this guy early, unless your roster's built really well.
Well, listen, I don't want to keep you on too long, man. I wanted to get you on because, like I said, I'm a fan of what you do. I follow it. I follow your stuff more than I do Pro Football Focus. I really feel like they're over there gassing. And they're putting things in there that sometimes I'm trying to figure out, like, how, but you don't know the play. So I was so happy when you, like, hey, I come on and, talk some football because people don't realize that you live in Michigan.
Oh, yeah.
And they don't realize that you really are a Lions fan. Like, you're not just some general guy out there doing stuff. You are a real local fan who's a fan of this team. So it's really cool that you came on and did this. Please plug all your stuff. Plug the Pride of Detroit, your website, your Twitter, your Facebook. If you got LinkedIn, maybe somebody, whatever. Plug it right now so they can know where they can find you.
Yeah, you mentioned the website. It's relativeathleticscores.com. It launched actually in 2017, but I'm going to pretend that I worked on it for the last 2 years and didn't throw it all together just this year. But it is launched fully. You can find any player that's got a score up there right now. Again, it goes all the way back to 1987. I'm actually just signed on with Pro Football Network. I'm going to be doing a ton of metrics work for them.
Are you serious?
I'm actually getting a team of people to do RAS-based type of content. We're going to be doing a ton of stuff, tons of work. RAS itself, the table is going to be accessible online sometime in the next year, both at my site and at Pro Football Network. So it's going to be all up. You can go pull up. You can write a score for somebody if you want to. It's going to be really cool. I'm excited about that. You've mentioned my name about 1 million times. I'm MathBomb on Twitter, just like it sounds, MathBomb. There's that on Facebook too. I don't do as much content on Facebook. It's mostly just linked to the website. But I'm extremely accessible. If you are on Twitter, you can get a hold of me. You can get a hold of me on the website. I'm available, and I love talking football. Obviously, I'm totally down for it.
Yeah, listen. Well, we're gonna definitely get you back on so we can have some more fun with this. We're gonna go through the final thoughts. I guess what I'll do, I'll start off with the Hood Cam because he's been so patient, man, backstage, just listening in and being a part of the show. Cam, man, appreciate you for coming on. I know that see, Cam is like my X and O's guy, right? Like me and Cam stumbled upon each other and just happened to have a lot of the same views. And it was like, that's just not possible. And on top of this, get this, MathBomb, he's a Patriots fan. Yeah, he's slowly edging over towards the Lions, but he's still gonna love his Patriots first. And I
mean, it's I think I told everybody who's been listening and heard me before. As soon as I got into coaching, especially coaching college, the fandom almost takes a back seat. Obviously, I always want the Pats to do well, but just being able to appreciate a good scheme, appreciating a good game plan, appreciating coaches being able to put a kid in the best position to win, that's really what takes over when I watch a football game and seeing all the adjustments and stuff. So, but anyway, yeah, I am a Patriots fan. That is true, Luke.
Listen, it's all good, man. What you got for the people? Because y'all, Cam gonna be on some more because I need Cam help again because I found another player in this draft that somebody told me to look at, and I ain't liking what I'm seeing, people. It's not lining up with the vision that I'm seeing. I'm like, this doesn't fit none of our schemes, and he doesn't look like he's going to pick up on anything if you try to teach him. He looks a little bit different. But Cam, tell people where they can find you at and how and plug your stuff as well.
Oh yeah, no, you guys can find me at I'm on Twitter at the Hook Cam, and then my YouTube as well, the Hook Cam. Those are basically my two major platforms. Like Luke said, I'm an X's and O's guy, so I break down film. I go through things I liked from a player, things I didn't like from a player. And then, once I get into the season, that's when I really start looking at first half, second half adjustments and, really diving into it. But YouTube and Twitter, man, I'm always down to talk football, always down to talk X's and O's. So that's where you can find me.
Absolutely. I appreciate you, Cam. Let's go into talking to Mr. Andrew and Real. So we start off with you, Andrew. This is the dynamic duo. We already confirmed that Real said he's Batman, so I guess that makes Andrew Robin, or at least Nightwing. We got to make him at least Nightwing.
Yeah, you got to chill with that, dude. I'm not no Robin.
He's the Joker. How about that?
Right. You got to give me something better than that.
Look, I gave you Nightwing, man. Listen, what about Red Hood? Can I make you the Red Hood?
Bro, I'll take Nightwing, but even then, bro, you better give me Superman or something.
Right, okay, he's Superman to Batman.
I just want to say, man, in a world full of so many opinions, it is so nice to finally get an objective standpoint about football.
Yes. Amen. It is. To be able to take everything else out of it and just say, this is all that I have to go by. Yeah, I think you're spot on with that, man. What are your final thoughts to the people? Is that just it, that the objective part, or you want to give them a little bit more?
No, I mean, it is just awesome to talk to you, get that analytical standpoint, and just, I mean, the fact that you created the RA score is just amazing, man. So kudos to you.
Yeah,
appreciate that, dude.
All right, Real. I can't call you Batman because Superman told me not to. I ain't got no time for that kind of beef. Okay, so Batman, aka Real, talk to the people and tell them your final thoughts.
In all honesty, man, we are the DSA. We're the Detroit Sports Avengers, so we're not DC.
Yeah.
Let's just put that out there first.
My bad.
Anyway, yeah, MathBomb, man, it was awesome to have you on. I've like 10 more questions to ask you, so I really hope you could come on again. But yeah, we'll narrow it down. We'll figure out something. I'm gonna get them back.
Yeah, we got to get you on Twitter, man, so we can try and get you on our channel too.
Yeah, hit me up, man. I'll follow back. We'll hook it up.
Yeah, 100%. But thank you to everybody in the chat. Before you guys go, hit that like button. I saw like 70 people in the chat, so let's get the likes up to as many people that are in the chat. Right. That'd be awesome. And subscribe to everybody in the DSA, and obviously follow MathBomb. Thank you.
Yep. All right, then we're gonna go down to Mr. Jim Bordeau. Mr. Jim to me, you ever like listen to those old late night disc jockeys whose voices is so calm and collected as you just know they got all the women? That's Jim. That's Jim. Watch Jim's final thought. Yeah, watch Jim's final thought. Watch how smooth this is. It's gonna be real quick, simple. Just relax. Just pay attention, man. Watch this. Jim, final thoughts, man. Go ahead. No pressure at all.
I just appreciate you coming on, and I think that it was amazing. We're getting to see so many different viewpoints from so many different people that we've been having on lately. We had Jeremy Reisman was on just not too long ago, and we've had a bunch of other people. And I love to see the different perspectives, and yours is the numbers perspective, and I really appreciated that tonight. Everybody out there, we appreciate you in the chat. We appreciate you being with us tonight and consistently coming on and supporting us no matter what night we choose to be on. Really appreciate it, and thank you everybody for tuning in. Everybody subscribe to all the members of the DSA and MathBomb, and I appreciate you. Thank you.
Listen, do you see what I mean? See that?
And now here's smooth jazz.
I know, right? Like he like as soon as he did that, you feel like he reached over and slide the little needle onto the record and everything.
I'm just glad my wife's in the other room and I got headphones in.
Like what you doing?
You hear how smooth he is? I'm telling you, a can of oil ain't got nothing on him. Next, we go up to the heart of the city, Mr. 313 J-Mo. What's your final thoughts to the people?
First, I definitely got to thank MathBomb for coming on, man. I've talked to him on Twitter a few times. It's been all disagreements, which I embrace.
That's best.
So yeah, I got to tell you to follow back now. We cool. It's cool.
Yeah, man. If we agreed, man, Twitter would be boring as hell if we agreed.
Listen. In sports, that's the way it should be. You can agree sometimes, but all the time it's not possible.
Exactly. Like we had some talks about Jelani Tavai, but every person that we have on that's a reporter or somebody like you that like has contact with the players and at the combine, I always ask about TJ Hockenson because I'm very high on him, and I don't want our regime to ruin him, meaning not using him to his best ability. So it's always good to hear what you guys have to say on that. And we ain't really talk about Matt Patricia much, and I would say good because he's been under fire a lot. But shout out to everybody. Everybody in the chat. If you haven't seen Bob Quinn talk about the Lions, make sure you go watch that. Videos will be dropping, man. Shout out to everybody in the chat. This was a very great experience, man.
Let me give you a numbers-based silver lining to that then. So I mentioned that stylistically there's a lot of Brandon Pettigrew type of stuff. And of course that's got that negative connotation to it. But don't forget that as limited as Brandon Pettigrew was, he broke Charlie Sanders' Lions receiving record for a tight end twice. And we got a much better version of that now doing some similar stuff. So don't discount that even as limited as Brandon Pettigrew was, he was still productive with a less savvy Matthew Stafford.
Hey. Yeah, I mean, I believe in TJ Hockenson wholeheartedly. I just want to know what other people think because I think he's going to be a monster. So that's just what I think personally. I just think you have to use him in the right way. And once Bevel realizes he needs to be the second option after Kenny Golladay, it will go in that direction, I feel.
I'm with you on that. All right. And, again, people, that leaves me. Y'all know that I always appreciate y'all coming in here. We hit as high as 75, so we appreciate that. Hopefully y'all got those likes up on that. And if you have not been a part of the live show, but you go back and watch this video, please check the description. You can connect with MathBomb on Twitter. If you bring smoke, he's going to bring smoke right back with you in an intelligent way to prove his points, and I love that about him. And you can find other things that correlate that make sense. So that's one thing. Two, I got to end the show on a positive note, and that usually means I'm coming with some type of positive quote. Today's quote comes from a source that I think all of us wish we can be like. I think all of us wish that we can take some semblance of ability from this person. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. I am talking about Spider-Man. That is correct, Spider-Man. Today's quote comes from Spider-Man. He says, "What we believe we know may not be the truth." I'm going to give y'all a minute to sit on that. See, too often we spend time thinking that we know things that we think we have a full understanding of. But what he's telling you is you're missing the overall view. Just because you know something does not make you the master of it. You should be constantly putting in work into your craft, constantly putting in work into making sure that not only do you know what you think, make sure that it's the truth of what you think. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, please make sure you subscribe to all the members of the DSA. Definitely check out MathBombs. If you can't keep up, I don't know what to tell you. And as always, don't be no chump. Please, 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 please do your research. We are out.